So this is the Fire Trap Elementalist that I have featured in every single video for this league. I generally speaking only create one character per league, and this is the one that I chose to play for this league. I have very much enjoyed playing this build. I have cleared every boss in the game on regular, and have been able to run some of the highest end content in the game as well. This video is not meant to be anything fancy. There's no showcase with this. I've put out various showcases throughout the league. There'll be one more of all the boss kills that I have to put out, but it's not going to be attached to this video. This video is going to get right to the point here. It's all about the Fire Trap Elementalist, and this is Path of Building. So here we go. In order to run this build, there's a couple things you need to know. First of all, while leveling, this node right here is amazingly useful. 20% mana regeneration rate, 20% maximum mana, 20 intelligence. It's really great. This, coupled with increased reservation efficiency of skills by 12%, this little node cluster right here is crucial. It needs to be picked up close to the beginning of the build. At the very beginning, I'm going to switch over to Act 1. I'm going to go right through here, down here, up through here, down here, and right into Act 2, I'm picking up this, and then going over to Elemental Overload. The build is sitting at currently 3.2 million DPS. I have an effective hit pool of 108,000, 408 life regen per second, 989 energy shield, and that is basically my mana to cast with because I have Eldritch Battery allocated. I have 80% chance to evade. I have 82% physical damage reduction. I have 96% spell suppression in game. This is 105%. I have 23% additional chance to block. All my resistances are capped, well over capped in some cases. And my movement speed is sitting at 132% with the 32.5 million DPS. Additionally, if I go over to this, click Frostblink, I don't need to change the skill down here. The Frostblink is dealing another 7.8 million damage with an Ignite. And that's over the course of I think it's 3 seconds roughly. Frostblink clears most waves for this build. Going back to Fire Trap. In order to run this build, there are only a couple things that are absolutely mandatory. And that node is one of them. I mean, the tree path, I'm sure you can change it a little bit, but all the reservation nodes are mandatory as well. Coming up here, the cluster jewels are not mandatory. I'm running 6 of them. I'm running 3 large, 2 medium, 1 small. The only one that is mandatory is this small one. This is a reservation efficiency. This allows me to add in the third and final aura. And this is reduces reservation efficiency of Malevolence. That being said, this build originally starts with using Determination, Purity of Elements, and Malevolence. And it takes a bit to get Determination in, as you have to get all these nodes allocated, and then you need a level 3 Enlighten support, as well as this cluster right here. Once you get that, you can get everything in, but there's one other thing you have to do that. You have to be Elemental Ailment immune to make this build really tanky. I'm using a Storm Shroud right here, and I have a Hypnotic Eye Jewel and another Hypnotic Eye Jewel. Both have 50% chance to avoid being shocked. Together with this, that allows me to become Elemental Ailment immune. As it says, modifiers to avoid shock apply to all elemental ailments. So I can't be hit with any ailments, which is great. Once you have this in place, this allows you to remove Purity of Elements and replace it with Grace, which is the final defensive layer of the build, which means you're running Determination, Grace, and Defiance banner. All of this is spelled out in the notes for this build, but before I go to that, there are multiple trees here. There's the trees I did while leveling, and then the pathing I took from 70 to 80, 80 to 90, and 90 to 100. This does not include any cluster or jewel sockets. This, on the other hand, does include jewel sockets. And this one is the one that you, or at least the one that I would suggest aiming for. The cluster jewels allow for a couple of unique things to take place in terms of the build. Doriani's Lesson allows me to leech life, dealing 32 million elemental damage. Leeching 2% of that is a significant return on life. It will fill up my entire bar in a second. That smoke cloud is really useful. But it decreases their chance to hit me. Coupled with the evasion is very nice. Blowback and flow of life are incredibly useful. More life regeneration, more damage over time, more ignite chance, and ignites deal damage faster. Mainly the ignites deal damage faster. I'm using a brutal restraint. Though this is not needed for the build, it is very useful. It's adding 34 dexterity to the build, which helps lessen the dexterity requirements. Additionally, it's adding 4% max life here, 20% and 20 more percent elemental damage. So 40% elemental damage and 4% life plus 34 dex. The tattoos are not necessary, but they are helpful. This right here, this one's really good. The Honor Tattoo of the Hunter is adding an additional 2 million damage by increasing my fire trap by an additional level. Almost all the other ones there's some increased life, chance to hinder spells, plus 4 attributes. These are all over intellect nodes, and I'm way over on the amount of intellect I need to make this build function. I think that's about it for the tree. You can, once again, you can change this and look around. I did not include any other alternate paths, like between when I'm cycling from the non-cluster version to the cluster version, which takes some time to do. You just slowly move the nodes around and experiment as to what you need and what you've obtained. I think I started with a medium cluster jewel and the small one, then added the medium one in, and then I added another medium one over here before I added any larges, actually. So that's just what I did. There's multiple routes to do that. Skills. I have multiple skill sets. What I did for leveling, then 6, 7, and 8 through 10, because the skills aren't really changing much. This is just me working on fitting stuff in. The final skills is everything at just 20, whereas the awakened skills are awakened skills plus everything at 21, which is what I'm currently running. The only thing I do not have, which I wouldn't mind having, is this awakened empower support. If I turn empower off, turn awakened empower on, it's an additional 2.5 or 2.2 million DPS, which is nice, but it's also 250 divine, so I don't have it right now. Looking through this though, you can change the skills as you see under items. Endgame is what I have this set as, and this is the one that I'm currently actively using. I have different sets of items for different areas. Mapping, the items are relatively weak. It's not great. The damage is kind of weak at only 4 million with this, but like you can mess around with these, make any changes you want. Obviously, I've included all those, all the items here. This wasn't meant to be anything extraordinary. I leveled a solo self-found character up to level 75 in order to put this together, and then everything in between is described in the notes. So I'm going to switch this back to endgame, as that's what I have everything defaulted to. I have it defaulted to endgame, awakened skills, because that's what I'm currently using, and the level 90 to 100 cluster jewel support, because that's also what I'm currently using. Going back over to notes or configuration. Here we go. So if you change the skills or the tree or the items, in some cases it'll give you errors with configuration, because these configurations are literally meant for the endgame build. So I have everything that is being applied to it set up and functional. Going over the notes. I included everything I think that would be necessary to know. There's some general notes here. I go through the acts of what I did, what changes I was making as I went through them. End of the acts 7 through 10, there's not too much going on. You're just leveling, looking for stuff. Here I talk about building up the defensive layers with Storm Shot plus the Hypnotic Jewels, needing the 50% shock avoidance. And then I talk about using Defiance Banner, Grace, and Determination. I'm using where my sources of different damage and defenses are coming from. All of that is mentioned in this down here. Under gear, there is a description of everything I'm using and what you can do to work up to it slowly or quickly if you have a ton of currency. The order which I do stuff, I tend to go armor, then spell suppression, and then as I'm working through that, I will slowly switch out once I get the right reservation efficiency plus the correct amount of ailment immunity, which is going to be 100%. Without purity of elements, I will add in evasion, switching that out for this second or the third layer of defense for this build. The leech is the fourth and final layer, and that's right here. I go through what I did for weapons, a very basic description of how to craft them and what you're looking for. And how to craft is not in everything, but everything's listed out what I'm aiming for. So body armor, what you need, eventually going to Skin of the Loyal. I can actually increase this build even further DPS wise by upgrading my Skin of the Loyal. I have where is it? I have +2 socket duration gems which is great, but if I get rid of the 44% damage and do +1 to all level socket of all level gems for the corrupted implicit, my DPS will jump up to, I think, just shy of 40 million. Going back to the notes, there is notes on the boots. Wave of Conviction as a source of exposure for the build until you craft an Eldritch craft on the gloves, which then grants exposure on hit, which applies to the mines and to the Frostblink. So boots, and talks about crafting them briefly. Amulet, what you could do, what you need, what you're aiming for. Different types of rings, what you're aiming for stat-wise. You want a Mage Blood for this. You don't have to have one. It functions perfectly fine without. In fact, I think the damage is higher, but the defense is lower. The Mage Blood's ideal though. Flasks, these are the flasks you want to aim for and what you want to aim for on them. These are not the flasks I'm currently using. If you go over to items here, these flasks are literally what is used with the Mage Blood, whereas these are what you want to craft prior to getting a Mage Blood. Mods to avoid when mapping. Cannot leech. You can still run this, but it's dangerous. As long as it's not coupled with cannot regenerate, you can still manage cannot leech. It's just dangerous. Decreased effective auras. You can still run this as well, but it depends on your atlas setup. So if you have a bunch of points allocated in the top of the atlas and this goes close to 90%, yeah, that doesn't work. Cannot regenerate. You can actually still run this too, but it slows you down tremendously. If it's coupled with cannot leech, you can't run this. I try to avoid all three of these if I can, but normally the decreased effective auras is on there. I do not like the cannot leech at all. I tend to avoid that one 100%. And then basics of combat of how I approach different mobs in the game as I'm running through. So this is a description of the build. I will throw the entire paste bin link in the description. Feel free to comment, ask questions. I'll try my best to respond. So enjoy the video and thank you for watching.